Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join the webinar. I know there are a bunch of people joining tonight, and we just greet you all. We thank you all for joining our webinar. Right now, when you come in, your microphones will be automatically muted, and we just ask that you please keep them muted tonight so that there's no audio interference from your backgrounds. And whether or not you have your camera on or off is really completely up to you. Tonight's webinar is a special webinar. It's hosted in collaboration with a company called Wibbi. And Matt, you'll have to correct me if I'm saying that wrong tonight. But the title of our webinar is Enhancing Clinical Revenue and Patient Satisfaction Through an Effective RTM Program. And if you're not familiar with RTM, our presenter tonight, Matt Jurek, is going to tell you everything that you never knew about RTM and how it can help you and how it can help your patients and your clinic as well. My name is Laura Gousset. I am the moderator tonight. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer from LSVT Global. I'm just going to walk you through some of the introduction slides, and I'll help with a question and answer time at the end. But the floor is going to be open for Matt as he talks about RTM. On the next slide, I'll just give you a few details about Matt. I know he'll probably introduce himself as well, but he has been an outpatient PT. He graduated from Indiana's University's DPT program in 2008, and he is an RTM champion. He began it for a privately owned PT company in 2022. He then joined he formed Osprey RTM S&C in response to a gap between clinic owners and software companies in 2022. He's been working alongside Wibbi, which you may be more familiar with, known as Physiotech. They totally rebranded this February of 2024, so they're now called Wibbi, as an RTM guide and consultant. And LSVT Global partners with Wibbi, and we have our LSVT BIG home exercise program through Wibbi. So that is why we have also partnered with them for RTM. A few disclosures here. We'll go real quickly through. I'm an employee of LSVT Global and have a preference for LSVT BIG and receive lecture honorarium as well. We do want you to know that RTM is centered around promoting improved patient outcomes and recognition of the power of therapy as medicine. And Dr. Jurek is not a representative or does not have ties with CMS, nor is he the final word in compliance. And as you know, with CMS, things are always changing, but he's going to do the best job to give you his knowledge and wisdom and experience as well during this webinar. The other one is regarding Osprey RTM receives payment and representing their platform and RTM solution, as well as filling the role as the individual clinic and company RTM implementation guide. So a few logistics that we'll go through right now. As I said, your microphones are muted. Cameras are optional, whether you want to have those on or not. You should have received handouts in the email. However, in about 10 minutes after everyone hopefully has had a chance to join, I will upload the slide handout into the webinar chat so that you can download that as well. There will be a survey that automatically populates after you exit the webinar tonight. So please do take a few minutes. You'll have an opportunity to ask additional questions of Matt if your questions didn't get answered tonight, and just give us some feedback about how well you received this webinar. Next slide. So in terms of CE activity, we just want you to know that LSVT Global does not pre-approve webinars for CE activity, but your state may allow for self-reported CE activity. If you're not sure, check with your State Practice Act to see if they do. You can receive a certificate if you attend the full hour of this webinar. The next slide. All right. So if you are viewing the webinar live, which you are right now, you can email webinars@lsvtglobal.com to request that certificate. And if you're watching this in the future as an on-demand webinar, there is a survey that you can complete after the webinar. You'll find it on our blog where the webinar is posted. All right. And lastly, before I turn the platform over to Matt for his presentation, just want to go through the learning objectives for tonight's webinar. By the end of the webinar, you will be able to recognize the definition of the RTM CPT codes, summarize the benefits of an RTM program for both patient and you as the provider, visualize 3 practical ways to administer and run an effective RTM program, and lastly, demonstrate Wibbi's RTM solution utilizing their robust home exercise platform. All right, so with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Matt, and take it away.
Good deal. Thank you, Laura. And everybody, welcome. I really appreciate you showing up to demonstrate your interest in what I am feeling like is the first few steps to really bolstering the offerings that therapy has. We know that we supply good service, and a lot of research has been done over the past decade demonstrating the effectiveness and value of what we do as therapists. Everyone from a speech therapist, occupational, and physical therapists are included in this realm, right? So it would be awesome if you feel led to toss your profession in the chat. That's kind of cool. See where you're at. If you're a clinic owner, if you're a speech pathologist, if you work solely as a specialist within the Parkinson's realm of patient care, if you see a smattering, if you're purely ortho, those kind of things are fun. It just kind of gives us an idea of what's going on. In addition, in the chat, like Laura said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. This is something I do frequently with owners. The education part is still getting out there in terms of what is RTM really to make it tangible is somewhat difficult. And I hope tonight is going to paint a picture so that you can kind of visualize what's included, what's necessary, and using your personnel and your unique clinic situation, how it could fit in. So we're going to go over all the nuances of RTM. There are specific questions, like I said, that might not get answered within the curriculum tonight, but please do shout them out in the Q&A so that we can get to them at the end. So what is RTM really? Back in January 1st of 22, all of a sudden these codes became available, right? Those in the know, and I wasn't one of them at that time, knew that these were going to come out. And what they wanted to do while presenting these new CPT codes, which, by the way, I've been practicing, as Laura said, since 08. I've not been aware of a creation of a new CPT code for a therapist to bill. All I've been aware of is kind of the death by 1,000 cuts during my tenure, my professional tenure, which hurts. It stings, right? As a professional, it stings to see our work get docked like that. So it's exciting when new CPT codes are available to say, all right, what do these really mean? And the initial intention was to create something which was already in existence, kind of copy it. So RPM was already in existence for physicians to bill. And the analogy I like to give there is think of a cardiac physician giving a monitor to his patient. He's got to recoup the cost of the device, of the training, of the time spent reading the data that comes back, and then documenting how it influenced his program, right? And the reimbursement for that happened underneath the RPM codes. So the initial rulings basically copy just how can we make this happen in the therapy world. So it was an effort to capture some kind of musculoskeletal data that was given through a device. Included in that definition was a software as a medical device. with the whole intention of encouraging active participation and opening up another door, another avenue for patients to feel comfortable relaying how they're doing, and have those open discussions with their treating therapists in an effort to kind of move forward, take the next step, and do it more quickly, more efficiently when they're having those communications. So that moves us to the other part of the codes is all those extra things that happen as a therapist, how well we take care of our patients by responding to an email, by offering a message platform that we can respond to their questions quickly, by taking that phone call while we're finishing up an eval and slamming our lunch sandwich because Sherry forgot something or she's nervous about how sore the exercises made her last time. Those are things that we've done organically. We all know that the patient that is following through with our prescription, our medicine, is exercise, and that person that is following through with that exercise is going to get better. They're taking our medicine. If we can demonstrate how well that patient's doing with it, boy, we are getting a nod to our professional prescription, something we're already doing. We're also getting a nod to how well we take care of our patients through the extra communication. So this slide just kind of says, again, the people that by rule can bill for these codes are PTs, of course, PTAs and OTs, OTAs, CODAs, and then your speech language pathologist. MDs are included in this too. They're always kind of lumped in with stuff. We know that. All right. So here's the codes. There's 4 codes in the outpatient orthopedic world, right? The fifth is only a change from 7.7 to 7.6 for speech. All right. So if your speech or respiratory in that nature and using musculoskeletal treatments, it's a 7.7 code. So I think that the majority of us here will be in the 7.7 realm if you're OT, PT. So we're just going to call it 4 for now. So basically the 4 codes. 7.5 code is I'm training the patient. I've supplied this medical device. We're talking about Wibbi, which was Physiotech. So if I say Physiotech, it's one and the same thing. It was a recent switch, and I'm used to years of using Physiotech's HEP, now doing the RTM education on their behalf. So if I say Physiotech, I mean Wibbi. If I say Wibbi, I mean Physiotech. Okay, we got it. So training that patient, providing them an access to a software as a medical device. It could be some kind of cool wearable device that's sending data back. We always want to make sure that the FDA kind of approves of it, and that helps with the full bolstering of what you're offering. But this code can only be billed once per plan of care. And how to bill that code, I'm actually going to flip forward to the next slide because this gives a couple more details. Is it's basically like a prescription. If you had a bacterial infection, you went to the doc, he wrote you a prescription for some medicine. He says, okay, I want you to get this filled out. You're going to go to the pharmacist, and here's how I want you to take it, how often I want to take it. I want you to finish the whole bottle, even though you start feeling better. So he gives you those instructions. You're not charged anything until you walk to the pharmacist. He gives you the bottle, explains again how to take it. Now your credit card goes in the machine, right? You're charged the co-pay, co-insurance, the full price, whatever your insurance says. That's when you're charged. So this is the same kind of thing with this. When that patient picks up their prescription, now the counter starts, and the counter counts with these other codes too here. So the first login or the first point of data that is sent by this device is day 1. If that person remains under your plan of care, regardless of their compliance, for at least 16 days, this is kind of preventing the HEP only, the one and dones, then this is a billable code. This is just once per plan of care. So I know that our Parkinson's type patients are long term, right? There's a lot of management involved over months. As long as it's still going underneath that initial plan of care, that just kind of keeps getting bolstered and lengthened and signed, that's still one plan of care. In my world, where it's more orthopedic, I see Jim for his shoulder in February. We do 2 months of work together. Then he comes in August for his knee pain. We do 3 months of work together there. Those are two separate planes of care. So this starts over for that second plane of care. The 7-7 code is 30 days during that plan of care. So day one is that first retrieval, first data point, until day 30. As long as the system is transmitting 16 of 30 days of data for you, that is a billable code in that 30 days. Day 31 now becomes day one of the next 30 days. And this goes on for as long as the plan of care is active. This code is demonstrating the patient's use, some data back that may or may not influence the therapist's decision making for what is being done at home. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit. We already give an HEP. That's what Wibbi's based off of, is their HEP platform. That's kind of what we're doing. We're expecting that person to follow through and after our clinic care, that they're doing stuff at home. That's where change happens. And that's where what was learned is either kept or lost, right, by what the patient's doing. So if we can prove that it's happening, that at least compliance is happening, then this is a billable code. And it's great because it follows the research. The person that does their work is going to get better. Or, you know, in the Parkinson's world, at least maintain longer, and hopefully make improvements and strides in the right direction, depending where the level they were when you found them at eval. The communication codes, 8081. Now, here's why it's important to have a system. Not only is it tracking 30 days with day 1 to 30 and interactions and data in between, but these communication codes are based on calendar months. Again, remember, we're dealing with CMS writing these rules. So here we go. So we got 30 days, we got calendar months. At the first of every month, you've got unlimited buckets in front of you. The first bucket is labeled with an 80. Then you have unlimited 81s afterwards. To be able to bill, the first communication code that you're going to bill is the 80 code, is time spent doing actions. The things that go in this bucket to fill this bucket include electronic communication, whether it's through a platform, text, email, uploading additional supportive education, changing the home exercise program based on responses, reviewing outcome forms. That is all the extras that go in here, as long as it's on behalf of and somewhat directly related to communication between the patient and or the patient's caregiver. But it needs to include, to be able to bill any of these communication codes, you have to have at least one synchronous conversation in a month's time. Synchronous conversation is like a volleyball match, right? Boom, boom, boom. It's instant. And it has to be able to be documented that way. So most often it's a phone call in the outpatient world. It could be 2 minutes, could be 22 minutes. There's no time limit there, just that it has to happen. Now, if that phone call happens, you can bill the 80. You don't have to have an additional conversation, synchronous conversation, to bill that 81. Other ways that the synchronous conversation happens in other clinics that has a large percentage of Parkinson's type patients, is oftentimes it's attached to a gym, right? So these people are coming in on days that there is not a clinic day visit. If it is a conversation that happens in person that is synchronous, and if you as the therapist deem it useful in their care, hey, Matt, could you show me that that little extra movement that we added last time? I've kind of forgot. I don't feel like it's doing right. Let me see it. All right, yeah, no, do this instead. So that's 3 minutes of your time as you're kind of walking between patients. Note it, right? That's your synchronous conversation. For the 81, It's all that stuff can be, but it's an additional 20 minutes that's documented, right? So it may happen several times. Um, in a busy outpatient world, if that patient is talked to once, you add a couple things, you'll get 8-1 or 8-0. Maybe you'll get 8-1 a couple times on patients. It's a nice thing to strive for. And when we talk some numbers in terms of benefits to the clinic, I'll add that and I'll kind of share some of that stuff. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing improved compliance with home exercise program. There was really not a way, thinking about 10 years ago when I'm practicing, I've been working, I've had 2-3 clinic sessions with Jimmy. Maybe there's 5, 6, 7 days in between the next session. He comes back and I say, how you doing with those, the workout at home or the stretches at home? And is it helping? Is it hurting? It's not helping. Nothing's helping. What did you try? Did you do them? Yeah. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, did you wake up this morning knowing that you had an appointment, not do anything this week? Wake up. Oh, I got an appointment with Matt. Do a couple exercises so that you could say that you did them, right? Like now we're seeing that they're happening. So me as a professional, if I saw that Jimmy, dude, he logged in 6 out of the last 7 days. He even told me how difficult they were. He even has his sets and reps listed. Boy, this guy went far. I know that he did them. He said that they're not helping. Okay, we need to check some things out, right? So that's the intention behind that 7.5 code, that 7.7 code of using that software in that way. And so the patient that gets it, I don't know how many times I've had it, just kind of getting feedback from patients after the fact. They're like, yeah, after I got over the fact that it was one more thing to do, like it helped, Matt. It did. Like it did. I was doing my stuff more often and that was beneficial to me. So I appreciate it. If you got that person that comes to terms and is able to verbalize it. The patient that has better communication will demonstrate better outcomes if they felt heard and taken care of. And this is a way to be reimbursed for that part of your care. And then, of course, hey, pipe up. Let me know if you got questions. Schedule a quick call with me. We'll do something like that. Let's make sure it happens. So patients like it. Therapy side, the therapist in clinic side. Yes, it's improving the HEP adherence. So that person that is being diligent, you can usually progress them more. We kind of knew that before we could see it on a graph. But now we can see it on a graph and we can tell people that this is included with your care and an expectation of you. Let's do it. Now we're getting more people to really truly follow through on what we're asking to do them at home. That's improving the outcomes. It can allow for flexibility in scheduling. If you're just slammed and there is somebody that really doesn't need to come to you 2 times a week, let's do more of a management schedule, Sally, and let's get that new eval in. Guess what? We've got RTM. You can message me. We'll call. We'll figure out a way to communicate, however that looks in your clinic space. She's being managed and still having a couple codes to bill for while you're getting that new eval in, right? So it's helping clinics out that way. We can progress the patients more quickly rather than just watching them do their exercises. Okay, review, move on, kind of thing, right? The obvious one that we're all intrigued in is the money, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? If done well, yes, it is. And if we take these other things into consideration, it certainly is. We talk about perfect patient population. Where does this fit in? The way we describe the 7.5, the tracking your exercises, you can still get those codes through on somebody that you're seeing 2 to 3 times a week. That's how we start. We're going to establish a habit. Great, right? Let's do your work. I'm going to follow up with you. It's quick. It's verbal reminders to make sure that they're doing their work. We talk about somebody in the Parkinson's world where now we moved into a management progression. Even in my outpatient world where I know that healing doesn't happen in 6 weeks, you're not going to be better. We're training out of habits over your last decade that got you to this point, right? So we need to rewind the tape for a while. In my optimal world that I can sell a patient on, here's what PT really is. Yes, we're going to do 2 times a week for the first 4 to 6 weeks. but now I'm going to drop you off and I'm going to keep you accountable and hopefully end up in some kind of management progression, which is where your Parkinson's patients live. It's never going to go away. We need to elongate this, right? Either we're limited by insurance, your ability to come in that frequently, your work at home is really what makes the difference. Let's move you into a community of people doing this stuff, but still check base with me once or twice a month. That's your ongoing plan of care that is needs to be stayed engaged with. I've never seen a patient population nor the caregiver more invested than this type of people do. And you know what I'm talking about. So they like this. They like being able to sign in, say that they're doing their exercise, ask you a question or two, follow up with you here or there kind of thing. It's really, honestly, if I had to choose a perfect population that fits well with an RTM scenario for an outpatient clinic, that'd be it. I hope I've made that clear so that you can kind of see where that fits in. A quick little phone call, a little touch up here, and staying on top of progression so that they're not losing steps in between the visits. Also, they're generally reimbursed by some form of insurance that falls directly under CMS. And that is who we know since day one had to reimburse these codes, right? So this is the best studied and standard, just like everything else out there when it comes to billing and reimbursements, is your Medicare patients. Okay, so we kind of baseline from Medicare, and then we know what commercials pay for things and what third-party insurances pay for things. So these numbers here are pretty much the first number listed is what I'm seeing when I bill these codes for Medicare. Medicare with a secondary is the second number, right? So they're going to pick up the other change. What my experience has been as that RTM champion, to kind of define that a little further, my buddy owns a few clinics in Oregon, 13 PTs. My current life situation at the time allowed me to invest my time to really dig in and figure out what this looks like, both from a compliance standpoint legally within the rulings, but then also how does this happen on ground level in the clinic. So I built a program for him and called myself the RTM champion. So I do, on behalf of the PTs, the tracking, the billing, the communication, so that their day is not screwed up. All they got to do is tell the patient this is going to happen and send them their program, enroll them. Now I kind of take over from there. So I've got a good handle on what numbers are coming in, at least in Oregon, where there's a little change regionally and even by state. But this is what we're seeing. So if we just take 2 months with an active patient, and I am able to bill each code on that person for a month's time, right? So I've got 2 months to work with. These are the numbers that we're looking at, right? So if I bill 7.5, 7.7, 8.0, and 8.1 in that first month, that first 30 days, magically that person enrolled with me on the first of the month, right? So this is the easiest to kind of keep numbers straight. Then we go, all right, I can end up with $210 extra, not really modifying my plan of care in time with that patient in the clinic. That's a good base to go from. The way I see it is that call, that communication, I'll usually end up with an 8.0 with patients. More often than not, the way I set it up is the extra stuff that's needed, I'll be able to bill an 8.1 with those patients. So that's where those numbers are figured out. I, generally speaking, will, sometimes bill an 8.1 if that extra effort was needed, the way I've set it up in my clinic. So that kind of comes to how do we do this successfully, right? Well, let's start with the basics. We know that we are doing step one here, issuing this home exercise program, education. This is our prescription. We expect and encourage compliance. Yeah, we do that. Okay. So we just need to formalize it for our patients, allow them not to have the initial fight back. This is what we do in our clinics. And this allows for more full reimbursement from your insurance. I don't have a problem saying those words. Light goes on. Then the light goes on from the PT's conversation of saying, look, we really know that these exercises help, and I have faith in my medicine that I'm providing as exercise. So if I can tell that you're doing it, we're going to be able to move on and change things. And if you tell me that it's kind of difficult or you help me track what's happening at home, we're going to be able to modify things quicker. Okay, great. It's going to allow you to ask questions outside of clinic appointment time too. Well, this is kind of already stuff that we've done. We're just more formalizing it, right? Um, some of the organic stuff happens here. Let's formalize how these points of contact happen with the patient. And now we can bill for these codes. Here's some other numbers with the 7577 breakdowns. I won't spend a whole lot of time because these slides are a little busy. But if we said, okay, if we build with the right workflow, we've got the patient buy-in, they're giving 16 points of data back, the system's sending it to us 30 days. In 2 months, 4 new patients just doing those steps, we end up with $480 additional reimbursement just for that supplying and encouraging. In the light of what RTM is, both helping the compliance with that communication part of things, electronic and synchronous, we're going to have better compliance on that end. But we're also assisting the patient. They felt heard. And it may simply be, are things going okay? Yes. Did you like that new stretch? Yes. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. That goes like a long way with Grandma Sally, or recently retired teacher Jane, right? That's the cool thing. Now I'm going to back up just for a second and state, because what I just mentioned reminded me that yes, your Medicare, your Med Advantages, those that fall right underneath your CMS guidelines are reimbursing these codes. If you see other folks with other insurances, there's a steady trend in the commercial world where we're probably 60 to 70% of commercial insurances are reimbursing these codes. You do deal with more out of pocket within what the patient has to handle because they're CPT codes. They are billed as sometimes therapy untimed codes. So we got to figure out where those are coming in your bill schedule. That's part of our implementation training. However, they are not considered a clinic visit, so the patient's not responsible for a copay. Yes, coinsurance, because it is a CPT code at their regular rate of their insurance. Your Med Advantage plans that have a unit limit or a visit limit, it should not count against that visit limit either. So there's ways to handle things within your individual clinic needs. That's part of our training. So sorry, thanks for letting me regress. I forgot to mention that earlier. This is for everybody, and it's going in that right direction. MVA insurances are paying well, and there's pilots in the workers' compensation world with RTM right now as well. So how do you get it done? Really, there's 3 ways that it's happening in clinics nationwide. What I describe to you, what I do is that clinic champion. So you take that extra little bit of attention and concern away from the in-clinic PT and you move it onto somebody else. It can be done in a couple hours. It can be, if you allocate it, within a week. So there's a lot of different ways. There's the mom that is returning from maternity leave that doesn't want to do full time. Well, she's got a couple hours. She can do it at home now. Lovely. It's great for both parties. It can be the stud that's out there. He's not married yet, or she's not married yet and recently out of school. Maybe they've got an extra 3 hours that they're willing to put in for you at home. They do their 40 there, they do their 3 there. That's ways that this is getting set up for allocating time. Oftentimes it's a PTA that takes this role, and the clinic just says, you've got your 40 hours of clinic time. We're going to give you 3 hours spread along the week for your RTM duties. That's just part of their expected duties. And it ends up paying off. That is one of the most successful models that we're seeing, where there's somebody always mindful about the RTM. Because the independent, if you move to a place where, all right, this is for the PT, it's going to be the PT that's having the communications with the patient. So it's going to be the PT that's following up with this patient. That makes the most sense in terms of value provided with these communications. I get it. It really does. However, it is often lost just because it's a new habit, a new flow that's different enough in a busy clinic schedule that it gets lost in the shuffle. And so I have not seen this model be successful for clinics that are more than 2 to 3 therapists. If you're three or less, and that you just have your little hometown clinic, and that's you guys, your buds, heck yeah, knock this out, right? It's something totally doable in that case. So I'm just sharing what I've seen outside. Um, then the third way of doing it is kind of hiring an outsourcing your RTM component to a third party. There we go. I said it right that way. Um, so what that individual does, so the clinic PT still evaluates, still treats, still sets up the plan of care, still modifies the plan of care, does all that stuff. They send the home exercises, the education happens there, and the encouragement happens at the clinic level. However, the tracking and the communication is then done with this third party. So at Wibbi, what we say is we've got you covered. Let's really kind of meet first, talk about your needs as a clinic owner, as your needs as an organization, and what part you want to invest in terms of workflow, and let's get you that right person in contact. So the outsourced component is basically a partnership within Wibbi that says we'll do this for you. So we hand it over to there using the Wibbi platform and working together. Um, what I get to do is if you say I'm going to keep this in house, then we're going to take all the training that's required from your staff and progress into. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to come back to this stuff in a minute, guys. So our training is going to help you overcome those hurdles, right? Without having to reinvent the wheel. What's worked well? All the patient-facing side of things in terms of resources to all the inside stuff, from training to your front desk staff to have these conversations with your patient, to your PT staffs and actions to take and really be knowledgeable about RTM. And I get to do that. So that's where our solutions have come from, because RTM, yes, it's leading into and helping PT kind of go into that new tech stage, right? That we know is all unavoidable at this point. But it's only 50% therapy. And I'm going to fight tooth and nail. There's nothing more effective than being there with your person face to face to help them overcome stuff. In the end, that is where the magic happens when therapy is successful. So that is always going to remain, but we need to leverage some form of technology to assist us in improving our outcomes and then supplementing what we're able to offer in terms of how we can be reimbursed. So there's a huge human side to things that requires a workflow, thoughtful, intentional workflows. And once that train starts moving on the track, it's a part of what you guys do. That's kind of how to visualize RTM as a whole. So whether you keep it in-house or you outsource it, we've got you when it comes to that training. So I do want to demonstrate a couple ways that Wibbi has done a great job offering its solution to get you to a point where you feel comfortable both billing for and supplying a quality RTM program. If you're familiar with Physiotech or Wibbi, again, I told you I'd say that, I'd say Physiotech, then you'll recognize what this is. I'm going to give a quick demo because I'm a firm believer in the robust nature that they provided for their HEP platform. I'm a very functional, multi-directional, multi-planar kind of PT. And I couldn't find those exercises in line with like Gray Cook, Gary Gray, if you're familiar with those names, anywhere else but here. And when we found these, great. So we were using Physiotech as our HEP provider for quite a while. The exercises were clear. Much of the directions was what I like to say anyhow. I could change things and make it my own. Came with videos, and then it also had templates, and it was integrated with my EMR. So they're integrated with most major EMRs at this point. So when I click the HEP tab from my EMR, Mr. Batman here has been generated his profile already in Wibbi. So he's set up. I don't even have to think about that. For the sake of this, I don't deal with Parkinson's patients too often, but for this webinar, I went ahead and said, okay, I've got my Parkinson's progression step 2. That's what I want to load up for Mr. Batman. So when I select that, I know that it's going to come up with 10 exercises I like to do as my progression 2. Well, we're only going to do these 3 today, and we're going to delete the unselected. All right, Mr. Batman, are you smartphone savvy? Let's text it to you. Or do you like to do your computing online? Well, let's send it to you on your desktop. You get it on your email. Send it away. I'll name it something. It'll go to Batman. We click save and it'll be sent. Great. So I'm not saving it for Mr. Batman. At that time, because Mr. Batman's already been made aware, we've got a good workflow. He knows that he's going to be encouraged to do something called RTM. I have the ability to click on RTM toggle. That's going to set the system so that it starts tracking all those days and months and actions that have occurred. And then also the ability to give him messaging privileges or not. Okay, that's done. Beautiful. So days go on, and what we are able to visualize, the patient front side of things too, it's as simple as creating a username, password. They're in, they go, they start logging their exercises, and they get dots. Okay, so that's kind of how the dashboard has been set up for 7.5, for 7.7, and for our communication codes. So I'm going to look up somebody here that's going to give us a couple green dots to visualize. So what did I do on 7.5? I educated and trained her, and I monitored her program. I'm clicking those. I'm the therapist. I know that that happened. I have the ability to mark her insurance to track it and possible end date as well. I've already billed the 7.5 code on her because she's now on her second round of 30 days, and she's making great progression. I don't have to send her reminders or bug her, but those red days, if they mount up, I, as the monitor, am going to reach out. Or I've set up automated messages in the system where she gets a nudge. Hey, let's keep going. This is why it's so important to keep up with your exercises. We don't want to lose ground in between visits. Something as simple as that will see a reuptake in terms of patient compliance. And it'll let me know when it's ready to bill at that 30 days. My 8 zeros, she's ready to bill for April because of billing stuff that we'll go into detail during the training. I'm going to wait until the end of the month to bill this code because I might get an 8.1. 8.0 and 8.1 need to be billed together. Any 8.1 needs to be attached to an 8.0. That's how Medicare reads it. But I've got my log in terms of what's occurred. I have my way of saying that, I spent 4 minutes replying to an email regarding whatever. I submit it, and it's just dumping it into the next bucket appropriately. I'm not going to do this with her because I don't want to go back and undo it later. The synchronous communication denotes that if it was that call. So I've already received my call in April. I just need an additional 20 minutes of time to be able to bill 8.0. Should I personally have the time to add that extra communication, or she have the need for it as well. When I'm ready to bill, clicking the bill button is going to generate any of the codes that have been populated and ready to bill at this point. Again, we're waiting for that 30 days to take place on that 7.7. But I've got all my documentation ready to go, exactly what insurance needs. It's easy for me to copy that report, stick it in my EMR. When I hit the code to be billed at that time in my EMR, marking it as billed here is just kind of a fail-safe. However, integration has been written with inside Wibbi to make it as simple as, once full integrations are happening one EMR at a time, to hit this bill button and all the documentation and the correct coding is shoved in through the EMR to go to billing at that time. So that'll be one extra step that's taken away from the PTs in the future. So that's what Wibbi has set up for the dashboard. With extra demos, you can request to see the patient-facing side of things, and kind of close that loop on what the patient's doing. I don't want to take up time demoing more on that end. So what I'm going to do is just kind of wrap things up, because I do want to leave time for some questions here as we go through. This is the roadmap, kind of what we're taking on. If you're interested, we'll talk about what kind of steps are necessary. Where do we need to meet the confidence points that we know are happening in our workflow, and people can confidently go in within 4 to 6 weeks and say, we're rolling out our RTM program. And then once again, just a reminder that there is the option of outsourcing within what is being called the turnkey solution within Wibbi. And it's just a matter of getting you in contact with the partner and who they've partnered with on that side of things. It is possible. It is worth it. I hope that I've laid well enough the professional nod that we've been granted. It is a nod in that way, but it is the work that's being done to help our patients in a more effective way. It's not a gift from Medicare, as some people may have you assume. There is time and attention that's given to it, but at the same time, it's recognizing what we already do and then just turning the volume up a little bit to make sure we're tracking it and billing it compliantly. So we got your back when it comes to that. All right, Laura, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt, so much for that very clear presentation. I always learn stuff from you. Now is the time, in just a couple of minutes, to ask Matt everything that you can think of about RTM in the next 10 minutes while you're typing in your questions into the Q&A. And I know we have one already, so thank you. I just want to go through some last information. We do have a webinar this Wednesday geared towards people with Parkinson's and their family members about navigating freezing challenges. So if you're a therapist on here, or if you are really involved in the PD community at all, please invite people to this webinar. As always, it's free, and it'll be this Wednesday. I am going to double check on the time. Typically it's 2 to 3 p.m. But if you go to our blog, you'll be able to see what the correct time is on that under events. All right, let's go to the next slide there. All right, there is a survey that will pop up if you're joining us live, which all of you are tonight. This will pop up after you exit the webinar. Please do complete it. If you don't have time, it'll also be emailed to you tomorrow. And there's some instructions there if you're listening later as an on-demand webinar participant. And I think there's just a couple more slides to go through. All right, this is our big news for in honor of Occupational Therapy Month. Hooray, thank you to all the OTs that are joining us, and a nod to Parkinson's Awareness Month as well. We have launched a podcast. We are so incredibly excited about it. We have probably 2 years of topics all lined up already, but listen to it. We just launched our very first episode, and we have 2 amazing OTs that are being interviewed, Julia Wood and Erica Vitek. They are LSVT BIG training and certification faculty, but more importantly, they're very highly experienced occupational therapists that have just a ton of amazing insights to share. So be sure to check that out. It's the Think Big and Loud podcast. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. All right, and last slide is just a couple of reminders and about our questions. Type your questions into the question and answer panel. If you have to leave or think of something later, no problem. Email info@lsvtglobal.com. And if it's specifically about RTM, we will be sure and get that message to Matt. He will connect up with you. For everyone that's attending the webinar, if you'd like a free trial, like you're not sure, you kind of want to test it out, all of you tonight will get a free 30-day trial to Wibbi. So you can also reach out to Wibbi directly or go to their website and just poke around and learn more at wibbi.com. If you want Matt to connect with you and talk more about what it might look like in your clinical world, I know he would be happy to do that as well. And you can leave your email and a message on the survey. And Matt, if you feel like putting any contact information in the chat or in the Q&A, feel free. I'll leave that up to you.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. We have a couple of questions that came in. Okay, so here's the first one. With Medicare, does the plan of care need to remain active in order to bill RTM? We typically discharge after the LSVT BIG protocol, which is a 4-week protocol. Is that the official end to RTM, or do you, I guess, keep that case open then?
Yeah, it's your professional decision at that time. So my PT hat on, thinking about the rule and what's best for the patient. If I am normally in the habit of discharging, but maybe that person would benefit from meeting with me at the end of the next 2 months with the addition of RTM, then
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's what my plan of care is going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, go for it. What we don't want to do is just like leave an open plan of care and keep billing RTM, right? That's not the professional choice. So as long as that's your care and your decision and you and the patient have agreed on it, by all means, yes, that's how you roll it. Once you discharge it, it's over. You can't bill those codes afterwards.
Okay, got it, got it. And I think this second one is similar. Does RTM only for discharge client clinic going billed to the current active outpatient clinic? So the active one, right? Who is not able to more than one
Yes,
per week. Okay. So in some
right,
instances, it could
right.
be
It's not.
integrated into like a maintenance plan, but in that case, it would be still active client.
Yep, it's active client. Whenever that initial evaluation happens, and
Mm-hmm.
you can enroll a person in RTM as long as it's included in your plan of care. And that's again part of the compliance training that I do with folks is like, let's make sure this statement is in anything that's going to go to the doc to be signed. That's where it counts. And even if you don't end up doing RTM because it's somewhat of a barrier with technology or whatever the reason is with that patient, there's no harm in having it in your plan of care. And then if you pursue RTM with that patient, it's there. It just has to be during an active plan of care. So once discharge occurs, then yes, we can't just pop up with codes from going there. So it's an active plan of care that's occurring.
Okay. All right. If the RTM platform is not integrated with the EMR that the clinician uses, is there still a mechanism that they can bill RTM? I assume there's just a little more work, but is that still possible?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're just making it nicer with deeper integrations. So at this point, speaking for what Wibby can offer you today, if you have an EMR that integrates, it's simply have that EMR, you hit that HEP tab, it's going to populate the patient profile and then send back a nice PDF of what you've issued the patient to save in the EMR chart. The RTM component of thing is still a copy paste, a split second thing, but a thing to do. Um,
Okay.
if you are not currently integrated or haven't the EMR have an integration with Wibby, then it's just a browser thing. You got Wibby open, you type in the patient's name, email, and phone number, you've created their profile. So that's the extra step of not having integration as of today. Obviously, those that have a current integration with their EMR, they're going to be the next ones in line to go full bore and just have that button to click so that the RTM data gets shoved over to the EMR. It's not there yet, though.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another question that I had for you is, we've been talking pretty much exclusively about the outpatient practice setting. Is there any way to use this with like home health, or is it really limited in billing to outpatient therapy?
No, that's a great question. And the answer is no. if one, go the extra step if you know that you are going to get paid for your time. We need to get paid for our time, PTs. I can't say that enough, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so your Medicare Part Bs, anybody that falls under there. So I've helped a couple successful folks that do home health as
Mhm.
well as do some form of assisted living for folks that are on Part Bs.
Mhm.
Um, those are both quality things. It's a little bit more difficult when you get into that upper age group with individuals. However, this can be pulled from a browser version or a smart device. It doesn't have to be the app on your smartphone.
Mhm.
Um, but the majority of folks younger than 80 have had a smart device in their pocket for the past decade, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like judging a book by its cover. And I was guilty of that when I started learning and thinking about how this can be done.
Yeah.
Um, I get Amazon packages from my grandma,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
So
Right.
she can
Yeah.
do it. Um,
Yeah.
they can do this kind of thing, or the caregiver acting on their behalf, right?
Mhm.
We know that
Mhm.
sometimes dexterity is difficult with a progressed Parkinson's patient, or what have you. So the caregiver can do this alongside with the patient. I mean, they're working out with them anyhow in most instances. So their responses count towards RTM goals.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, I think there's one last question here, unless anyone, this is last call for questions, everyone. This is a little bit different, but I think it's an interesting question. Any suggestions on finding an RTM job? Looking to supplement my
Mm,
current position.
yeah, yeah. So there's a couple companies out there doing that. There's based off of different platforms, right? So there are different companies that will hire generally speaking, a PTA, maybe a CODA to do the follow-up calls and do the tracking. Um, if you kind of go through and get in touch with who Wibbi has partnered with, they're one example. Um, you know, I can't start throwing out a whole bunch of names right now,
Yeah, yeah.
in terms of who to lead you to at that point, but they are there and might be even on job searches as RTM therapist. I mean, you could honestly just plug that into a job search and see what's happening out there right now, because my
Hmm.
guess is you'd find somebody. Different states, need
Hmm.
different, because you need to be licensed in that state of that patient where that patient is located to be able to bill their CPT code. So that rule still exists. Yeah,
Hmm. Okay,
good
got it.
question. It's
Got
there.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say too, if you're an LSVT BIG certified therapist, you have an instant huge network of clinicians. You could be a really value added resource for a company with a large number of LSVT BIG clinicians that would love to add that service, and you know how to do the follow up exactly with patients. So it's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And honestly, whomever asked that question, that's kind of where we're at. People are navigating this scene and building different things. So if you have that good connection, I mean, plug in and be their person, That's a great idea.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, last question here for the night. If I don't have the platform for RTM, how can we implement this program and build through the current EMR we have? So you have to have some sort of platform, right, Matt?
Yeah, you have to have either a hardware, a device, that's going to send you back electronic data, or a software as a medical device. There has been some confusion within the rulings if you go searching about does it need to be FDA approved or not.
Yeah.
I think that is a definite look for that. Um,
Hmm.
and so, Wibby is FDA approved, and actually in the documentation says here's the number.
Hmm.
So it's in that direction, and that would be a good place to start when you're trying to evaluate what type of software to use. So yes, you have to have that device, either that device or that software as a medical device, proven the data that's coming through. So that's where you need to start, I think, would be the way to answer that question. Yeah.
And I assume they're all proven HIPAA compliant and everything like that. I think there's quite a
Right.
bit of regulation they have to go through to achieve that. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, great
Yeah.
questions, everyone. We are out of time, and I just want to thank you again, Matt, for spending your night with us tonight, giving us this information on RTM. I think it's super exciting. I've talked to a lot of people that are interested in it and just really didn't know enough. So I think this has been a good launching pad, but I know there's a lot more to learn. Best way is always to get in there, try it, experience it yourself, and just make it a habit. Like Matt said, habits take time to start, but if it's going to help you, if it's going to help your patient, your clinic, then I think it's a really, really great idea and something worth investigating. So again, if you want to reach out with additional questions at any time for Matt, you can email them to LSVT Global at info@LSVT Global, and we will route those right to him and help you out in any way that we can. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt, and I wish you all a good night.
You bet. Have a good night, everyone.